Okay, wrestling fans, welcome to the season finale of Wrestler Weekly Conversation Season 2. We are so happy to have you here. Remember, you can follow us Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Wrestler Weekly. Don't forget our book with our author Scotty Richardson, Family Bacon Wrestling, that you can get some of the perspective on why we do what we do. But there was another book we're going to talk about tonight that I am excited for you to hear about. Lance by Chance author Vinny Berry is here. That's right, to talk the career, the story of Lance Von Erich. And you've heard a lot of stories from the one side, but this is very unique in the sense that we're finally hearing Lance's side of the story. And the cool thing about that is this is not a bash kind of thing where it's, oh, bash the Von Erichs and this is Lance's story. This is just merely the telling of an interesting story. And a career that was actually quite remarkable, and some things that fans might not know. So Vinny Berry has been in the news for over 20 years. He has had the great site Wrestleville. And you can also get his book Lance by Chance. So make sure you pick it up today. Rave reviews from Slam Wrestling, among others. So make sure you check it out. So without further ado, from the great Lone Star State of Texas, Vinny Berry is here. Vinny, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be with you tonight, Mike.
Awesome. Awesome. So Vinny, tell me a little bit about your journey as a wrestling fan. Did you grow up a wrestling fan? Was it something you got into as you got older? Who were some of your favorites?
Yeah, I grew up watching World Class Championship Wrestling. So I liked the Von Erichs. Of course, when I started getting into the magazines, I was intrigued by Dusty Rhodes. I liked him, very colorful and very, fun to watch, right? So I would probably say that, I was probably more for the good guys, but there were some bad guys that I liked.
Yeah.
I always like to see, like, I don't know what it is about big guy wrestlers, but I like King Kong Bundy, I like Kamala, Big John Studd, guys like that, so.
Yeah, some greats. And I like King Kong. He's a Jersey guy. I'm up here in the state of New Jersey. King Kong Bundy lived about an hour away from where I do. But he was one of, and again, another guy who got to start in world class. John Studd had some Texas roots, as well. And of course, Kamala, the late great Kamala,
Right.
And so it's so cool to hear you bring up the magazines, because at Wrestler Weekly, that's what we specialize in. We love the magazines. We grew up reading the magazines, and that's where you would learn about, and we've talked about this quite a bit with a couple of our other guests this season. You would learn about other territories. You would learn about other guys, and you'd read them in the magazine. And now, thank God for digital footage. But I remember I got into the tape trading and all that stuff. And it's cool to see. So I loved hearing about your connection to Dusty Rhodes that way through the magazines.
And Eddie Gilbert too was like that. And Tommy Rich, because I couldn't get those guys on TV, but I got them in the magazine, and they seem to be in the magazines on a regular basis. And I felt like I was following them, you know what I mean? So yeah, the magazines helped a lot back then. So yeah, it's good. It was good. Now,
That's awesome.
I didn't know that those magazines were like 2 months behind though.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was 6 weeks. They were about 6 weeks behind. Yeah.
6 weeks. Yeah.
But you couldn't wait. Like when they come out with those super cards issues, and you finally read, oh my gosh, they had this show, and all these things. I remember learning about a show that World Class had run in Lynn, Massachusetts. It was like a one-time deal. They came up to the East Coast and wrestled in Lynn, Massachusetts on a small stadium outdoor show.
Wow.
So again, you could find things out in the magazines, and you go, oh my goodness, and this was before, the advent of the internet and instant communication and all these things. But speaking of World Class Championship Wrestling, the territory, so you have recently written a book with Lance Von Erich. Tell us how the inspiration for the book came out, and what it was like getting in touch with Lance.
Okay. Yeah. So, Lance was just always one of those wrestlers that, when I would see him on the internet, or, if you come across him, of course, there's you know, you go on the internet, there's a lot of negative stuff about him, and you know, you'll see like Lance Con Eric or Lance Non Eric and stuff like that. And I always just kind of thought, like, what really happened with that dude? You know, like, because they brought him in, they say he was a cousin. Obviously, he's not related because they told us that he wasn't, and then he disappeared. And so when I started Wrestleville.com and I started writing stories, and in Wrestleville.com is just a platform where you know, I tell stories about veteran wrestlers or up and coming wrestlers. You know, I there for a while, I had like, well, because of COVID, there haven't been a lot of shows, but I was putting like poster graphics from all over the country, the world, right? Because I wanted a place where people could, you know, find out where the events are, and they can go to my website and find out where the events. But I found out that was a lot of work. That took up a lot of time, and I wasn't writing as much as I wanted to be writing. And of course, then, you know, it got to the point where I kind of had to put the website on the back burner to finish the book, which I did. So you'll be seeing more stories on my website. But you know, that was how I met Lance. Was, you know, I was talking to James Beard, and I just, you know, I was doing a story on him, and a couple of times, you know, Lance had come up, and you know, he was saying, well, you know, Lance did good with that position, and you know, he gets a lot of, you know, undue heat, and then you know, I just said, yeah, that'd be an interesting guy to talk to. And he just said, hey, this is how you get in touch with him. And so I reached out to Lance, and Lance was like, yeah, let's call me tomorrow, and gave me his number. And I called him the next day, and we talked, and I told him I wanted to write a story about him. And, you know, it was real funny because he was like, who cares to read this, and who's going to read it, and where are you going to put it, and why do you want to do this, and who cares? I was like, dude, I care. I care.
And he's a guy a lot of wrestling fans have wondered about, because, and you've heard things through the years, and I've looked Lance up at different times, seeing he was living out of the country. He had kind of, you know, he had retired from wrestling. He had wrestled a little bit after that. But even in seeing some of the photos that were even just on your social media and things, and on the cover of the book, it was like, wow, like there's more to this story. You know what I mean? And I think too, like, as we were talking about before, you know, we really jumped on here. I don't know that it's necessarily a matter of the good Von Erichs versus the evil fake Von Erich. I think it's a matter of, here's a guy who was put in a spot, asked to fill shoes that nobody could, you know, and I think that kind of, you know, I wonder what your thoughts, similar to like a Chris Adam or a Brian Adias, right? Who's brought in, well, this is a friend of the Von Erichs. This is an ally of the Von Erichs, like the Simpsons and all these guys. Do you think Lance would have caught the heat that he did, or do you feel that it was strictly because they called him a Von Erich?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because if they brought him in as, like, you know, our longtime friend Brian Adidas, you know, Brian doesn't get any heat.
No.
You know, but see, I think you know, Fritz brought a lot of this on himself, because he went on television and he, you know, broke kayfabe, and you know, which was like, you know, wow, you know, and it's so funny is, like, you know, I read the passage of what he says, like Kevin said earlier in the book, it's like, we never lied to our fans. Come on, people. Wrestling is sleight of hand. It's been sleight of hand forever. So are we, I mean, are we going to get so, look, I know what wrestling is and I like it.
Yeah.
I don't care. I used to share a room with my brother and I had all my posters on the wall and my brother was not into wrestling and he was like, dude, wrestling's fake, right? And I said, well, Rambo didn't kill all those dudes in that movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we both had our thing,
Yeah.
and so, it's just like, hey, I'm cool with it, man.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm okay with, Kamala really being from Mississippi and Lance
Yeah.
really not being a Von Erich. It really blows my mind that people take this, someone was bashing Lance on Facebook today, and he
Yeah.
was like, and I was just telling him, I said, well, you don't know the story. He
Yeah.
goes, oh, I know the Von Erichs. I know the story. You
Yeah.
don't know the story.
Yeah.
Because
one side of the story,
you know one side of the story. Look, I know a lot of people that read the book and have told me, wow, I had no idea that happened. And I have a newfound respect for him. And,
yeah, absolutely.
a lot of people, and I'll say this about the book, Mike, is that, a lot of people, because this is what I'm hearing, and this is, a lot of things that I've been having to tell people, he's not bashing anybody, he's not
Yeah.
burying anybody. If he buries anybody in this book, it's himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's honest to a fault,
Yeah.
and he tells you why his marriage has failed. He tells you that he did a ton of steroids.
Yeah.
He tells you that, he shipped guns from one country to the other. He tells you all this stuff.
So he's really an open book. Yeah.
He's an open book. And I don't think it would have worked had he not. And I think that's the one thing that really makes this book really good. When I talked to Johnny Mantell when in the process of making this book, and you heard about the Von Erich movie, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And I don't know where that is because I did talk to the guy that worked on that script, and it's on hold, but I don't know all the details or anything. But Johnny Mantell said to me, he goes, it's a damn shame that Kevin is helping with the script because we're not going to find out what the truth is.
Yeah. 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 And it's interesting to see, because again, I think we take it. And one of the things that I think fans will find refreshing about this is that you did have contact with Kevin. Kevin does have a quote in the book. That's right. He did write a short passage. So again, this was a project that was really open to just telling a story. Again, not saying, oh gosh, the Von Erichs are bad and this is Lance's side. This is not Lance versus the Von Erichs. This is just Lance detailing what his experiences were.
Right. And you gotta understand this, that I am a huge Von Erich fan.
Same here.
I love the Von Erich. I grew up 10 miles from where they grew up.
Yeah.
And so I went to the shows as often as I could. I went to most of the big ones.
Yeah.
All the Christmas and
Star Wars. Yeah.
Star Wars and the Texas stadiums and the Cotton Bowls and all that stuff. And let me tell you something, man. I mean, I cried when all those guys died.
Yeah.
I mean, living up there in that community, it was like, I didn't know him personally. Not even pretend that I know him personally, but it sure did feel like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, when Mike was missing for almost a week. Let me tell you something, man. Everyone was praying for that family. Everyone was asking, hey, did they find Mike yet? What happened?
Yeah.
I mean, and my parents, I remember how sad my parents were when they found him.
Yeah.
And, it was just like, I'm telling you, it was I've never seen anything like that in wrestling before.
Yeah, they and still to this day, still have a connection with the fans. That is, and I think that's why you see so many passionate feelings, especially on a subject like this, because people believed, and that's what good wrestling should do, right? Wrestling should make you believe, it makes you feel something. And so, one of the things that we had talked about is it's so good to see that, Kevin and his family are living well in Hawaii. They've been through a lot of things. But I think too, here we are, in a digital age where you could really see a lot of everybody. And yet it seemed that Lance Von Erich kind of flew under the radar a little bit. So to have this book come out, how is when you approached Lance, do you feel he was ready to tell the story? Had he made peace with kind of the whole thing, or was he reluctant to do the book? Or
well, the story came first for the website.
Okay. Yes.
And he was just like, again, we'd be talking about it and I'd be asking him questions, and then out of the blue, like, and where are you going to put this story again?
Yeah.
On my website. And then we'd talk more about Billy Jack or whatever,
Yeah.
or Portland or whatever. And anyway, by the time that story got done, he was just like, wow, that's pretty good. And I was like, I said, hey man, you got a really, really, really good story. And I really think there's a lot more than just this little 1,000-word story. I said, look, if you ever consider writing a book, please come to me. I want to write your story. And I might have only had to say that once or twice. And
wow.
But I didn't know it until later that, other people have asked him and he didn't want to do it.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, he said many times, he goes, well, there was just something different about you, Vinny. You were
you guys connected.
Yeah, I don't know, for whatever reason, he said yes.
Okay, great. And so as you kind of went through the process, did you feel that this was like kind of a cathartic process for him? Do you feel like this was helpful to him to kind of get the story out?
Yeah, I do. I do. And we can come back to that question. Because what's interesting about this whole thing is that, well, first off, it was a long process.
Yeah.
It took a little over 3 years, maybe, almost maybe 3.5 years, right under 3.5 years to get the thing printed.
Okay. Yeah.
I probably, to give you an idea, I think I had most of the story in about maybe, well, I didn't write anything for 9 months. I know that. And I think I had the bulk of the stuff like in a year and a half. I knew how the story was going to go down. And then December of 2019,
Okay.
I had it written, and then from I guess January to 2020, January of 2020 to November, I was just putting in, taking out, putting in, cleaning up, taking it back to my friend, read it. They take it back, rewrite it. Read it.
So that whole process. Yes. Yeah.
And that took almost a year. So we did that, but it was good because the thing is that, and here's the funny thing, is I would send it to Lance and I would ask him, hey, did you read those chapters I sent him? Because I sent him like, digital copies of chapters and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah. And then finally one day we were talking and I was asking him questions and I just said, dude, you haven't read the book, have you? And he came clean and said, yeah, I hadn't read the book. And I said, you need to read the book because we got to print this book, man.
Yeah.
And he said he wasn't ready to read it for a while because, the world-class time wasn't a really good time for him.
Yeah.
And, what I found was that, and I think that he blocked a lot of that out because he could remember a lot of stuff from Portland and he could remember a lot of stuff from Africa, but like a lot of his stuff on the world class stuff, he was like, I got to get back with you. I can't remember. I think it was this person. And then he'd come back and say, oh no, it wasn't so-and-so, it was this person. And I was like, dude, you're killing me, bro.
Yeah.
But you got to remember it was 35 years ago. And, I think back 35 years ago, I remember certain stuff, but I don't remember everything.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of research. There was a lot of people that I talked to, and he talked to a lot of people. I mean, there was a lot of people that we reached out to, and
that's awesome.
It wasn't like we just threw this thing together. I mean, there's a lot of thought put into it. I didn't know if you it's like when you read the book, you'll see like, it flows really nice, but it didn't flow very nice in the beginning. It took
but I think that's what it
takes.
I was gonna say, I think that's what it takes to get that right mix, that right accurate story. You're not putting something out there that's half-assed and going, well, we talked to Lance Von Erich, here's the story, like, and so be it. Like, there was purposeful thought, talking with different people who were there, all that stuff. So, when you do that, I think it comes together real nicely, but succinctly as well. And you can get a really nice story there. So I think, when you have some of those things, and again, I loved how you mentioned the connection with James Beard and said, the things that he was saying about, hey, Lance gets some undue heat here, and here's why. What would you say are some of the most common misconceptions by wrestling fans about Lance Von Erich and that whole experience?
That a lot of people don't believe or know that he was created by Fritz.
Okay.
And a lot of people, like they'll say things like, well, I don't like Lance. And I'm like, well, why don't you like Lance? Because I don't like Lance. And I'm like, yeah, but what did he do? I mean, what did he do to you? I mean, he had to do something really bad to you if you don't like him. And they're like, well, I just don't like him.
Yeah.
They don't have a reason.
Yeah. It's just kind of, this is the narrative, and we'll follow
it's the narrative. It's kind of like, when a trend comes, it's like, it could be stupid, right? But everybody's doing it and it's cool, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's part of it too. A lot of people like, well, it's not cool to like Lance Von Erich, so I'm not gonna like Lance Von Erich,
Yeah.
A lot of people 9 months, I guess 9 months before the book came out, I would, started kind of feeling the temperature in the room, so to speak, and putting pictures of Lance and go on the Facebooks and say, hey, this is my favorite Von Erich. People like, who's your favorite Von Erich? And I'd be Lance. And they'd be like, whoa, hey, dude, don't you know what this is? Don't you know that, and they'd give me a hard time. And it's a little different now. Now they know who I am, and there's a mutual respect, but a lot of people are like, well, we get it, dude. You're a Lance fan. I'm not a Lance fan.
Yeah.
I'm someone who can appreciate a good story. And
Yeah.
let me tell you something. If you give this thing a shot, this is what I did. This was in the very beginning. I gave it to like 3 people, and 3 people that didn't like wrestling, didn't even know what. Yeah, I mean, they know what wrestling is, but
Yeah.
they didn't know it like you and I know it, right?
Yeah.
They don't care for it. They walked away like in the book.
Wow. That's great.
And a friend of mine says, look, give me 3 chapters. I will try to finish it. He goes, but I hate wrestling. So, don't take it personal. Yeah. And he called me the next day and said, dude, I read all 3 chapters. Give me the rest.
That's awesome. That's cool.
And so, it's a good story.
Yeah.
It flows. It starts off with it kind of tells a story of why he started working out in the first place,
Yeah.
and then how he works out and how he got discovered,
Yeah.
and that's why the book is called Lance by Chance. If he wasn't overweight when he was a kid, he probably wouldn't have gone to the gym. If he didn't go to the gym, he wouldn't have been discovered by David Manning. If he wasn't discovered by David Manning, he would have never been a Von Erich.
Yeah. 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 And it's so interesting, to hear how the journey comes about and hear how, like you said, these chance things. And I think another thing too, knowing that I didn't realize that, when he had got in, he was sent to Portland for seasoning. I thought he was an established guy in Portland, and that was really cool to read. And I'm a huge, that was news to you too. Yeah. And we've dedicated our season to Jim Valley, who does the Portland WrestleCast, and Jim was sick this past year, had a very tough time, and so we want to honor him. So any chance I get to work Portland in somewhere, you know what I mean, in honor of Jim, we try to do that. But I've been going to the Portland wrestling digitally, chronologically, from probably about early 1977 on, and you'll see, Ricky Vaughn and all these stuff. So now it's kind of piqued my interest more to see his outside of world-class stuff. Because I'm not even 100% familiar with all of his world-class stuff, some of his stuff, but I too kind of was that fan that was like, you know what, I don't really want to watch Lance, and now kind of getting to know the story a little bit and hearing that, at the end of the day, this is a person who was asked to do a job by probably a desperate dad, a desperate businessman, who at the time thought he was probably doing the right thing. Yeah.
Well, you asked what there's another misconception.
Yeah.
And the other misconception is that everybody thinks that they brought him in because Mike had the toxic shock syndrome.
Yeah.
No, they brought him in after David died. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. Because he was at the Cotton Bowl for the haircut match, I remember. But there were talk about Lance as early as, 84,
Right. So it was planned a long time ago.
A long time.
I think they had the idea before they had the person.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. But and seemingly innocuous enough, you know what I mean? Because Waldo is a kayfabe, and people, I know he's not considered one of the Von Erichs, but for years, Waldo Von Erich was a star. How many times are there kayfabe, Kane and the Undertaker, right? They're kayfabe brothers, or they're kayfabe cousins. But I think people were so invested in the Von Erich and that American dream, and that, here are these church-going boys, they're America's sweethearts, that anything less than that was maybe seen as, scandalous.
But you can bring up Waldo Von Erich in a wrestling conversation, and you will not hear he's not a real Von Erich.
He's not a real Von Erich. Well, that was pre the boys, You
won't hear it. But when it comes to Lance, You know,
Yeah.
it was funny is because one day I was talking to Lance and I said, "Hey, I got a picture of your dad. I'm going to put it in the book." And he goes, "You got a picture of my dad? How in the hell did you do that?" I go, "Your dad, Waldo." So,
But yeah, I think it's funny. And I think that, like I said, I think that was part of the undoing of world class. Again, with people like you
well,
had said, try to point to Lance as the last straw, but there were things going very far south, probably a lot more than that and a lot quicker than that. You had a lot of variables in
yeah.
world class going under.
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
You've got, David Von Erich died, right?
Yeah.
And it talks in the book, because, and I talked to David Manning, the NWA was seriously considering, if they didn't pull the trigger on the idea, that they were going to put the belt on David Von Erich,
Yeah.
right? The NWA. So,
Yeah.
David died. Then Gino Hernandez died.
Yes.
And then Mike Von Erich died.
Yeah.
And then Kerry had his motorcycle. Kerry had his motorcycle before Mike died. But here's the thing, and Fritz pulled away from the NWA. I tell you right there, that was huge when he did that.
Well, you lose, and again, wrestling was changing and going national, but you lose Ric Flair, you lose that
credibility.
luster, you lose, you lose that, and that's tough. And I think, like I said, I think I don't blame Fritz for trying to recreate the magic that Kerry, David, and Kevin had, because it was on fire,
Well, and I also wanted to bring up something too. You'd asked me, what were some of the
misconceptions,
and those were two big ones that I could think of, right?
Yeah.
But one of the when everybody I talked to for this book, everybody said how unreliable the Von Erichs were.
Yeah. Okay. And you hear a lot of stories like that. And
so, here's Lance picking up, doing 2 shows a night.
Yeah.
Thinking that this is never going to end.
Yeah.
And he got wore out,
Yeah.
And here's the thing about Lance, and a lot of people, I hope that you do go back on the WWE network and binge watch his matches.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. He is not as bad as everybody thinks. Now that know
the story,
this guy would have never been a wrestler ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. It was not, it wasn't something he was planning on. Yeah.
I mean, I have a better chance of becoming a ballet dancer.
Yeah, than he had. Yeah.
Than he had ever been being a wrestler.
Yeah. Which again, I think goes right with the title of the book. Like you said, these chance happenings, and he ends up in the wrestling business, and it ends up becoming this big thing. But I think you're right. You know what I mean? Like, I think going back and watching some of these things with an open mind. And again, we're not telling anybody, oh, you have to like Lance now, and again, fans can like or not like whoever they want. But I think, I've always enjoyed wrestling with an open mind. It's why today's fandom and consistent critiques and things like that people don't enjoy wrestling as much as they used to, because of the fact that maybe they know too much. They're picking things apart. But when you watch with an open mind, bad wrestling is bad wrestling. But when you generally have a fuller sense of the story, and the context of things, it could really change your view on things. And I think, I think that there's a lot of things. I think that when you look back, that's kind of my goal. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I've been going through world class chronologically. I'm in like the winter of 85, January, February right now, getting into March of 85. So it's going to give me a renewed outlook on watching these films.
Yeah. Well, he was doing stuff. Kevin was probably doing this stuff because Kevin was a high flyer. He used the
Yeah.
rope a lot. Well, Lance did too.
Yeah.
And Lance did some drop kicks off the top rope from the
Yeah.
turnbuckle and everything, and from the corner post. And you didn't see a lot of guys doing that stuff,
Yeah.
but he did that stuff. So when you go back and you think, wow, why does everybody give this guy such a hard time that he can't wrestle? Look, you know, a lot of times he was next to Kevin and Kerry.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and here's the office. The office was saying, okay, well, whatever you do, don't outshine the boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, well, how am I going to do that?
Yeah.
How am I
Yeah.
going to do that? He knew that he didn't wrestle as well as they did.
Yeah.
But then there's some people in the business that didn't like working with them.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And absolutely. And did you get a sense that Lance was well liked by his peers? That, that this was just kind of a bad situation?
everybody,
Yeah. That's
everybody.
awesome. That's
Ric
cool.
Ric Flair warned him.
Yeah.
Bruiser Brody warned him, but all these guys liked him. Yeah, he got along well with everybody. But yeah, he was warned. Don Owens warned him. Billy
Yeah.
Jack Haynes warned him.
Yeah.
Bruiser Brody warned him. Ric Flair warned him.
Yeah.
Ric
And Don
Flair,
Owen had wanted him to stay in Portland.
yeah,
And that was something I learned too, that and again, I think you look right, you look at the difference between bringing this guy in, a young, good-looking baby face, right? Because great wrestlers don't always have to be the best workers in a sense. You got to be able to do what you do and do it well, And so I think well, he's not a good wrestler. Well, not everybody, you know what I mean? I take a look at certain guys that weren't always the best wrestlers per se, but they were really good professional wrestlers, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? They didn't need to be as a Ric Flair, but they needed to do what they did, and they did it well. Hulk Hogan to me is the best example. When people see tapes of him in Japan and he's doing, standing wrist locks and enziguris and all these moves, and he's mat wrestling. Well, why didn't he do that in the States? Because he didn't have to. He didn't have to. This was over. You know what I mean? It was Hulkamania was over. And so again, I think a similar thing, like you said, Lance doing those flying moves. I think that would have been more than enough for him to get over as a babyface and ally of the Von Erichs, where he could have had a good time. You know what I mean? And potentially been a star there. And he was, he's the last Ric Flair match in that territory, so again, the guys Rick Rude and and things like that, and so he had a lot of really great talent to work with. But again, this piques my interest for seeing some more of that Portland stuff too, seeing him team with Billy Jack, and some of these guys, and get to really see him in an environment where he's probably a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people have told me about the book too is why they like the book is, you're reading about guys that you normally don't read about in books. You're reading about Bobby Jaggers and Don Owens and Billy Jack Haynes and Steve Simpson and Iceman King Parsons. Chris Adams. You got some Bruiser Brody in here. Someone told me, he says, you know what? I enjoyed the part where he's talking about Bruiser Brody in your book, because he goes, every book that I've read that's mentioned Bruiser Brody, they say that, he was a bully, and he was hard to get along with, and he did his own thing, and that wasn't Lance's experience.
And I got that from talking to his wife too. Brody was just a smart guy. You know what I mean? He wasn't going to get punked by promoters who were going to try to stiff him. You know what I mean? He knew what it was to protect the gimmick and protect his character, and made sure he was strong. I learned so much, and I'm looking forward to reading this because I learned so much from talking to his wife Barbara about the type of man he was, and really, really cool. So, like I said, so much different. The book that she wrote with Larry Madison is wonderful on his life, and you really kind of get a picture of the dad and the husband and the gentle man that Frank Goodish really was, you know.
And that's what Lance says. You know, he was
Mm.
he was a loyal husband and
Yeah,
a dedicated father. You know, he
yeah,
was a hard worker. He was
yeah,
committed to business. He knew
yeah,
the business. You know,
yeah,
he defended the business. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
so
What, you know, a man who's still talked about so fondly, 30 plus years after his passing. You know, and again, I think when you hear that, even when you hear, like I said, so many fans today of the Von Erichs were still so passionate, and I'm hoping, you know, like I said, what I'm hoping to see is that people open their mind a little bit, enjoy, you know, Lance's era, and I think maybe people relate it with a lot of painful memories. You know, and that could be it too. You know, a lot of painful memories of David passing and Mike and things like that. But I think for me, you know, I think it's opened my eyes, and one of the things I'd like to see is some of his work appreciated. You know,
right.
because you know, by all accounts, from what I'm hearing, you know, it seems like he was a real decent guy who just unfortunately was kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right. And you know, a couple things that I'd like to share is like I wanted this book, you know, for people who, you know, if people came around and said, "Hey, I want to read one good book on world class championship wrestling,"
Hmm.
I wanted it to be this one.
Awesome.
I wanted it to be this book. You know, Gary Hart wrote a book,
Yeah.
and I don't know how many prints or copies he did because, you know, I've seen it online for $2,000. You know,
Yeah, it had one printing. You can get a PDF version, but it's not the final version of the book. I read the PDF. I got it for $10 off some guy, but to get an actual hard copy cover of the book, there's not many, and yeah, thousands of dollars. And Gary passed away, you know, around that
yeah.
time, so it wasn't like there was more printings or anything. Oh, I love Gary Hart, love, but that was one of the finest books I've ever read, you know, and
Well,
I hope fans feel the same way about this one.
I've heard it from many people that when it comes to honesty about the what happened in the promotion, they're comparing my book to Gary's.
That's awesome. That's
And
great. And I think hearing that from folks who were there, I think that's the proof in the pudding right there. You know, when you're talking like the guys like John Mantell, James Beard, and all these guys, you know, and because I think that's what you want. You know what I mean? You want to know that you're putting something out there authentic, and it sounds like to me, like I said, the work was done. The research was done. Again, I think this, like you said, that news background, you know, getting to the bottom of a real story, you know, and things like that. So, I mean, it really sounds like you guys knocked it out of the park here. And I know we're really excited, you know, to be able to explore it and look into it a little bit more.
oh yeah, and I can't wait for you to read it. And like I say, you know, you can get the book at lancebychance.com. You can also get it on Amazon. It's on
Awesome.
Amazon. You know, and I really think if you give the book a chance, I think you're gonna like it. You know, there's so much more in it. You know, it's like when you look at the book, you know, when you break it down, it's almost into three sections. You know,
Mm.
you got his training in Portland, and then you've
Mhm.
got like, you know, world class in Dallas, and then you've
Mhm.
got like overseas and what all happened overseas. Well, you know,
Yeah.
he had a 10-year wrestling career.
Yeah. Yes,
A
he
lot of
did.
people, a lot of people think it was only 2 years or a year and a
Yeah.
half.
Yeah, he
But
he did, and I had heard that over the years, so I'm very excited to, and that's why I really liked seeing some of those pictures, was because wow, you know what I mean? You look at the shape he was in, and he just looks like a star, you know. And so good to hear that, you know, wrestling could be something that was fruitful for him after the fact, you know.
But here's the thing, you know, when he left Dallas, and he's told me this many times, he goes, I didn't become a good wrestler
Mhm.
until I left Dallas.
Wow, wow.
And I asked him why that was, and he said, because wrestling became fun then.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Because he wasn't wrestling 2 times a night. He could
Yeah.
wrestle when he wanted. You got to understand too, this guy knows how to make money. So
Yeah.
he's not somebody that needed wrestling
Yeah.
to get
Absolutely.
by on.
Yeah.
You know, he made his money in health clubs, and
Yeah.
you know, when he sold those things, if a promoter said, "Hey, do you want to go to Singapore?" Hey, I've never been to Singapore. I'll go
Yeah.
to Singapore.
That's awesome.
And you got to understand, he loves traveling.
That's awesome.
And wrestling took him all over the world. He said he's lived in 8 different countries and he's been to 120.
Wow. That's really cool. Really cool. Yeah. Yeah. You can't buy that kind of experience. You know, that's incredible.
I've lived in 4 states and I've been to 1 country.
Yeah, yeah, yes. I'm very much. I think I've been to 2 different countries and maybe 3 or 4 different states. You know?
Okay. Well, yeah, if you count Mexico, I've been to 2 countries. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Same thing. One of mine is Canada. You know. Well, I'm so glad again, fans. You know, you can get the book at lancebychance.com on Amazon. We here at Wrestler Weekly, where Vinny was kind enough to send us a copy, so we're going to be diving in. We're going to be posting about it. But we really hope that you'll give this book a chance. We really hope that you like this interview and this insight with Vinny. Vinny, thank you so much for taking some time and coming on with us. We're real excited for the book, and we look forward to hopefully having you on again in the near future.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Oh, no problem. So, wrestling fans, this was the season finale for season 2. We hope that you enjoyed it. This was a really fun season to do. You know, you know, we always hope that you guys get something cool out of it. So, again, conversations, you know, and that's what we love about this, get to have really cool conversations with some cool folks. So, we hope that you'll join us again. We got some cool stuff coming, Wrestler Weekly. In the next couple of months, Scotty has an article on Ron Simmons that's coming out that he's actually released this week, but it'll be in a wrestling magazine coming up soon. So more information coming up on that. But keep following us. Thank you guys so much, and thank you for a great season. And Jim Valley, thank you for the inspiration, for coming back the way you did. And we hope that we honored you with what we did this season. Thank you guys so much. Take care.